In trying to solve how do we exercise specifically in relation to the aging athlete, I found 4 common denominators, which we can show by landing, because that's the number one thing that we can naturally do youthfully, but it gets progressively scarier as we get older. Number 1 is a deviation in ability by direction. In the pursuit of our goals, we end up going harder forward, but if we have enough ability backward, we don't break down when we go forward. Number 2 is a deviation of ability from top to bottom. It's natural as we go into modern exercise to do more things to build the upper legs and upper body and less for the ankle. You cannot be too strong from the ground up when it comes to protecting your body. Number 3 is a deviation of ability from left to right. When I did that, did you wince somewhere? And if so, was it more to one Achilles or knee or hip? That's natural due to the random nature of life, that injuries don't happen evenly to each side of the body. And number 4, a deviation of ability from the outside to the inside of the joint. It's natural as we experience a pain to avoid that, when in fact, being able to figure out how to go into it at your pain-free level results in greater protection, because the internal structures of a joint can also develop, but not by avoidance and not by working through pain. And it's probably the best recap I've done yet of what the ATG system is. I am joined by my buddy Nick, aka Over the Hill Hooper. Check him out on Instagram. He did the ATG membership for a year now. He's been doing ATG for coaches for a year. He's got like a whole ATG at home, training people at home, and we're gonna look at his perspective on this formula. Backward is an obvious one for the knee, but it relates to other parts of the body. Nick, what you got for us?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, they overtrain. Specifically, when we talk about the upper body, especially, they overtrain certain movements. So I know for myself, like growing up as a young dude, you're in the gym, you want to do a lot of bench press. And that was me. I drove up my bench press numbers, got really strong in movements like that. But what I didn't do was ever work on external rotation, movements like that. So ultimately what that led to for me was shoulder pain. I ended up with pain in both of my shoulders. And so just a simple movement like the external rotation, I'm gonna set up here and just show how this looks. So just with the knee
Got
up.
the chest muscles, and we'll get an anatomy image on the screen of external rotators. So front to back, these are muscles that are directly opposing.
Yep. And so now, just by controlling this dumbbell down, really getting a nice stretch here at the bottom. Now, I'll tell you, when I first started this move, I used significantly less weight than
Like
this.
how much?
I was probably working with about 10 to maybe 15 pounds. And now
what was your peak bench press?
350.
Okay, 350, working at 10 to 15 pounds.
Exactly.
So we're only talking there like 3 to 4%.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So now I'm up to a point where I'm working with probably 30 to 35
This is 20 pounds.
Right. And so just starting by working on range first. So even in the beginning, I could not get all the way down. I would get to about here and I would feel a little bit of pain here. So I just started here, and then over time, just slowly worked deeper and deeper into that range, really focusing on controlling that eccentric on the way down, pausing at the
your
bottom.
intent, because there was pain in certain areas,
Yep.
your intent was just to control in the pain-free area
Always.
when you're starting out.
Yeah,
okay,
always.
start at 10 to 15 pounds,
Yep.
controlling. And for perspective, someone might be starting at 5 or 8 pounds. You're
Yeah.
benching 350.
Yep.
So now you're doing now you can do about 10% of what you can bench.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's a good, helpful ratio for someone, because it's relative how strong someone needs to be on it.
It's humbling. These little movements like this, you don't realize how much these little things play such a major role in keeping your shoulder feeling good. So yeah, 100%, just focusing on control all the way through the movement, exploding back up to the top. I have people who start this move with almost no weight. You know,
Yep.
some people, this is it right here, just focusing on just getting this range and then just building up from there. So
Well, you do the other side.
Yeah.
I'll kind of close this out. There's no such thing as too low of a regression. Let's say you're going to be training this on a weekly basis. Let's say my mom is 69 years old, and before we started this video today, we got B-roll of her doing classic ATG exercises. She's been doing it for about 5 years now. Okay, so let's say she started when she was 64. So like 250 weeks have gone by. Even if you went up a pound a week, she ain't doing 250. No one in the world can do 250 pounds on this.
Yep.
So if you started at zero, if you start at just the weight of your arm, like there's nothing wrong with that. It's a different way of thinking about training.
Yep.
There's no such thing as too regressed.
Yep.
And then progressively loading. Now, left shoulder, right shoulder, were the pains pretty even? Just want to...
yeah, typically they were
Okay.
pretty even.
So your pains came mostly from bench pressing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was being in this position too often.
And you still look pretty
overdeveloping.
jacked, but the shoulder pains are gone?
Yes, my shoulder pains are gone. Yeah.
Okay. Hope this one helps you. Let's go to the next. Now let's look at Nick's journey when it comes to top down?
Yeah. So growing up, being in sports and stuff, I spent a lot of time in the gym. I spent a lot of time training. What's interesting is that I look back on those years of high school and even before high school, before I really started training, the areas that I always had problems were ankles up to the knee, right? So really lower leg stuff.
So obviously you addressed those, right, in high school?
Yeah, not at all. It's not sexy to do tib raises and calf raises. All you're focusing on typically is your big lifts, your squats and your deadlifts and your cleans and things like that. And I'll just be real. I was the guy who just spent a lot of time on the upper body. I think that's why I got like this. So not enough time on the lower body. So then for me, when I got into my mid 30s and I started to have even more problems, all those things that I had when I was younger started to compound, and I'm having major issues with my ankles, my feet, working my way for the first time, really getting into the knee issues. That's when I found ATG. And so when I started ATG, where everybody starts is the Zero program. And for me, that was humbling. You get into this thing where you're an athlete all these years of your life and you're squatting heavy and you're lifting heavy weights and you're doing all these things. And all of a sudden I'm being told to
let's see it.
Get into a body weight tib raise, right?
Yep.
And so this is where I was, right? And I'll admit, like 4 weeks into this, I started to see progress. I started to see my ankles feel better, my knees feel better, all that stuff start to feel better. And then I wanted to move on very quickly. And I had to humble myself, and I'm so glad I did. So I spent 12 weeks just working on building up strength in those little areas, the things that you typically are not seeing happen in
Keep going.
probably
Gotta
most
burn
high
those
school weight
bucks.
rooms. Yeah, for sure. So just working on building up something like my tibs, and this right here, I mean, you talk about it all the time. This is perfect. You can get a crazy burn and start to really build a lot of protection here in these tibs. So this was huge.
Yeah, Zero is a flow from the ground up. I was the same way in high school, and it's actually a natural thing because you don't want to work through pain. So it's like, my knees hurt, so what can I do? Upper body.
Yeah.
You're manufacturing more pressure on your knees.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't be jacked. It's about the proportion, though.
Yeah.
So you could do the upper body, but also be building from the ground up.
Yeah.
The idea of running into an issue and then trying to put on more muscle weight to now be on top of even more weakness. So this is something you can just start, flip it around for the calf.
Yeah,
That's step one, flips around for the calf.
And then so for me, one of my biggest issues was always ankles. And so just working into movements like this, so the FHL calf raise, and just really starting to build up strength.
FHL, he mentioned, we're talking a muscle that goes from the big toe about 2/3 of the way up the calf.
Yep.
So you have, I think it's like 29 different muscles associated with the foot. The body wasn't necessarily designed for just modern weight rooms, which are set up to build mass through the upper thighs and upper body. So proportionately, it's almost like the average person who exercises is manufacturing a body that is more designed to break down from the foot, ankle, and so on. So he mentioned FHL, meaning we're just trying to really get all the way through the foot.
Yeah. And then the next one being, of course, the knee over toe. So now starting to get into that soleus and strengthen up the Achilles, all things that I had issues with all the way through. So
You'll notice the gastroc. Think belly of the leg, gastrocnemius. So that's the name, belly of the leg. But you have another calf muscle that's lower and deeper called the soleus. So think lower, like as in going toward the sole of the foot. And then when we combine that with the first one, he was doing the anterior front tibialis. Tibia is your shin bone. So it's just the front muscle of the shin bone, belly of the leg, calf muscle that goes to the sole. Boom. There's your big three. There's other ones. I said 29 different muscles associating. Those are the big three. And if you're working those in these different ways, you're going to be getting a lot more address of all those little muscles compared to not at all.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, you might think, okay, all right, he's building from the ground up. He's building from front to back. We did that with the calf. He's doing that here, right? We're good to go. Not quite. There's also the balance from one side to the other. So as a basketball player, he's done, you'd say, tens of thousands.
Easily.
Tens of thousands more jumps through his left leg, which is common as a right-handed player, than the right leg. So for him, aging, how long is he going to be able to dunk, has a lot to do in present now with how balanced he is from side to side. So this is an extension from top down into also side to side. What's your journey been?
Yeah. So again, like you said, I realized that for my entire life, I've been a left foot dominant jumper, a left leg dominant jumper. So now as I came out of zero, start building up some of those imbalances and getting some of this stuff stronger. And then I start adding weights and I start progressing all the movements and I start driving up strength up here. And now just recently, I was just sharing with you, now all of a sudden I started to see that I'm having a little bit of trouble with my Achilles again. So, which I think is really important to point this out too, is that especially for like the aging athlete, this stuff isn't always perfectly linear, right? So like there's going to be times, like I've been doing this for 2 years, but there's still going to be times where you may have to regress something back down or find a different way to do it. And so for me, we've been talking about this, figuring out now, I actually need to go back to doing some more of that stuff to strengthen up the Achilles. So like you're seeing Ben do here right now is a single leg. Yeah.
If someone stayed with zero, the balance between sides, the strength from the ground up, so parts 2 and 3, the balance from front to back, that would all be there. As it gets into loading, we're now subject to exercise equipment.
Yep.
And so you're now using dumbbells, bars to build the legs, the glutes, the back. You're building a home gym.
Yep.
So this would be an example of something that I could now, for that same soleus muscle, I could build the world's strongest squat and yet still go to failure. I could still keep that soleus getting proportionally as strong.
Right.
So for you, we want to dive into this like for real, really look at these issues.
Yeah.
So for him, the ball game now is still keeping in the principles, but really applying it for that Achilles. Now, have you thought, are you going to, like he was looking now for like maybe getting a seated calf at home. Like, what do you think you're going to do? Like, what is your strategy? Because you've built now tremendous power.
Yeah.
So like, what is your strategy? Are you just going to do zero for high reps? Or are you going to get equipment? Like, what are you going to do?
No, 100%. So immediately after we had a conversation the other day about this, right away went on Amazon, started looking for a seated calf machine, because I do think that is going to be the next step for me. I need to continue to build more strength in this area. So
it makes me think you've been loading the tib though, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So because of the tib bar,
Yep.
you've been loading the tib, but there's not just like a quick, cheap, free weight soleus loader.
Yes, for sure. Yep.
So this is a much bigger jump. So from your journey from zero, loading the tibs, but not loading the other side, which
Correct.
this is the part that protects the Achilles. It's right there by the Achilles. Your Achilles is the strongest tendon in the human body. A tendon connects muscle to bone. Your soleus, pound for pound, meaning like relative to its size, has the strongest pull of any muscle in your body.
Yep.
That being said, as we were kind of discussing, I travel so much.
Mm-hmm.
I've unintentionally kept doing a ton of zero. I do about half zero, half gym. And I'm always thinking of it like, I can't wait to get back in the gym and lift.
Yeah.
But looking back over the years, it's like, holy shit, I never get hurt. These aging principles, even though I want to be lifting more weights,
Yep.
and I'm not that old, these principles, I haven't been able to escape from zero. So it definitely is an option. Based on the way that tension works, you could use higher reps and tension. You absolutely could.
Yep.
It does tend to get more boring after a while.
Yep.
So here's one more super simple.
Yep.
This is more for that gastroc area that we mentioned, but at least it might break up some of the boredom. So if you kept in the KOT calf raise, you could even challenge. When I do my KOTs, I go even slower. Like I try to challenge it. Like this you could do all day.
Right.
I try to like really challenge that soleus. But this is great because you can load up. Like, look, let's face it. If it takes me 25 reps, sometimes it takes me 30, 40, 50 reps on this to burn out.
Sure.
That's not fun. 50. I would rather load and do like 8 reps controlled, heavier loading. It's great. You get it done quicker. That's why. So when I'm in here, I ain't doing the knee over toe calf raise. I'm on the seated calf, answering text messages, going to failure. And then I do this one as well. So
absolutely. Yep. It's good.
At least we've got some solutions.
Absolutely.
You would think we'd be all done. But there is one more point. Last but not least, building from the inside out. That can seem complicated. Simplest way I can explain it. This relates to a lot of different exercises, but imagine increasing the strength of your deadlift, so the total power of the backside of your body. Imagine if you got way stronger on that, but literally weaker in that motion. And this is what we see. I've worked with a lot of like top powerlifters, guys who've squatted 1,000 pounds and stuff, but have really bad knees. So I was, wait a second, if you're that strong, how do you have bad knees? Well, the muscle bellies are very big and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You can emphasize in and around the joints. This is one example, one of the toughest ones, the Nordic. He trained from home, didn't have access with clients. I would just elevate the bench, scale it, hamstring curl machine, like progressing was super easy for us in the gym. But most people out there struggling with the Nordic, you're going to help us break down how you did it, and we'll look at the lowest possible levels of regression.
Yeah. So the first thing, I mean, my setup was not great. So I was just going with, the plates on the side of a barbell. I don't know if you maybe put a picture up or a video up of someone doing that.
But all that. Yep.
Yeah, and just, having a pad on there. So that's literally how I started. And what I would do is I would put some kind of a bench or something out in front of me, because I'm not kidding. When I started this movement, I couldn't control down more than maybe 4 inches, and then I would just collapse. So, and that was a fine starting point. What I would do is then I would just work on that.
Can you do it now?
Yeah, I can do it now. Yeah,
Let's see one so we can look at this.
But this was,
you'll see the tension. You're still strengthening your hamstrings, but the leverage point, it actually becomes really strengthening in there behind the knee. So like for protecting the knee ligaments, this is huge. Wow. Super impressive. 38 years old. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
So you started, you had a bar, you put it behind the rack, you load it with plates, you put like a towel or something there, you put something for your knees. You're kind of like in a Nordic setup. How did it go?
Yeah,
so you said you put a bench in front of you.
Yeah, so I would put a bench in front of me, and then essentially what I would do...
I'll set that up here so we can kind of imagine that.
I mean, you can make a ton of progress just by controlling. So what I just did was a full Nordic, where I went all the way down, eccentric, and then exploded up. But you can get a ton of gain just by really focusing on the eccentric, just controlling down to the point that you can, and then just pushing yourself back up. This is where I started. Then over time, I just lowered that point more and more and more and more until I got to the point where I could make it all the way to flat ground, and then started working on the concentric portion too and coming back up. So that's how I did it.
That is a great way of doing it for most people. I'll show you even one little thing that someone might be able to do. A cable and a band are pretty similar, and you could imagine if you took a band of some sort. Again, there's no such thing as too low of a regression. I didn't even check what weights. That'll work. Just contracting those hamstrings for high repetition would be better than nothing at all. So I would say, if you can, here's a simple rule. If you can get a workout by what Nick just did, controlling down, like if you can fight and get a workout and you're not in pain, you'll probably be able to progress that way. If you can't even get a good fight, like if it's not fun for you to work on to even fight down, just start working on your hamstring curls. And as you work on the rest of the system, you can then progress to where you can fight down. So it's like, you could see with this, I could start at 1 plate. Like there's no such thing as too low of a regression. So hamstring curls will get you strong enough, high repetitions, until you could eventually do some sort of an eccentric on the Nordic. And then the way up is something that we get into. It's a bit more advanced. It tends to be a natural urge once the way down is easy. You want to explode, you want to tap into the muscle fibers. It's almost in the family of like Olympic weightlifting. It's explosive. You don't have to do it just for the context of that. But our motivation for that, we'll put it on the screen, is Marty St. Louis. Was the oldest player to ever lead the NHL in scoring. So in hockey, this guy has the greatest longevity ever. And this is where we got the form. You can see him flat on the bench, hands behind his back. His glutes contract first. This means the abs have to get off the bench. If you didn't do that, you could cheat there. You wouldn't really know how much of your own weight you did. So he contracts, he keeps the shoulder above the hip, meaning it doesn't jerk back forward, and he pulls up. If you watch his form on screen, it's unbelievable. So this was our motivation. It took me 2.5 years to do one of those. So we're all somewhere on that scale. And just to conclude out on this topic, the same thing goes for how strong you are here versus here, 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 here. The deeper you go, and most people realize, most people who squat all the way down, even if they do, they are bouncing out of the bottom. And if you think squats don't feel good, they didn't feel good for me. Ankle imbalance, knee imbalance, hip imbalance didn't feel good. I had to make all that progress. We'll use my mom's image here on the screen. I had to progress where this felt amazing, the full range of motion split squat. So by building from 1 to 2 to 3 to outside inside, so now you can see the split squat is something that is made easier by the previous steps. And like a full squat is now the combination of all these things, controlling at full range of motion, contrary to popular concern. The knee does not have an increased risk of injury from a deep squat. In fact, it's an effective lower body injury prevention exercise and actually leads to less degeneration of the joint. So that's ultimately what this whole thing accomplishes, is strategic systems of ability to not wind up with the deviations as we age. We're gonna age no matter what, but what can we do about it? Here it is. And over the hill Hooper, does he still have it? Is he over the hill or not? What side of the hill is he on? Let's find out on the court.